Immediately after our daughter's funeral, my husband was already pressuring me to throw away everything she owned. "Just forget it and move on," he kept saying. But while I was going through her things, I found a note. "Mama, if you're reading this, look in my backpack right away. You'll understand everything." I opened it and let out a scream. "Dear friends, I would love to get to know those of you joining me today. If you don't mind, please let me know where you're listening from. I'm curious to learn about my audience. I hope you find this story compelling." The rain drummed against the roof of the black sedan, tapping at the windows as if demanding to be let inside. Silence filled the cabin. Adaya pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the Philadelphia autumn blur outside. The gray row houses merged with the leaden sky, and the streetlights smeared into yellow blotches on the wet asphalt. The woodland cemetery was behind them now, but the scent of damp earth still haunted her, clinging to her nostrils and leaving a bitter taste on her tongue. Her dress, that same black one Sanari had helped her pick out last year for a gala, still felt heavy. Sanari had told her, "Mama, you look so good in that. It makes you look 10 years younger." Now it was speckled with drops of holy water mixed with rain. "You can't keep tearing yourself apart like this." Jabari's voice sounded mechanical, as if he were reciting a line he had practiced. "What happened, happened. Life goes on." Adaya turned toward her husband, trying to make out his profile in the dim light of the car. For 15 years, she had woken up next to this man. She knew every wrinkle around his eyes and every mark on his neck. But right now, he felt like a complete stranger. His face was like stone, his lips pressed thin, and his knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. Even the scent of his cologne, sharp, with notes of bergamot, felt wrong today, far too celebratory for a funeral. "How can you—" she began, but her voice cracked. "What? How can I keep myself together?" Jabari shot her a quick glance, and a flicker of irritation crossed his eyes. "Someone has to keep a level head. Hysterics won't fix anything. I have a major meeting with suppliers tomorrow. Life doesn't stop." At the funeral, he had stood off to the side under his black umbrella, watching the ceremony with the expression of someone attending a business lunch. When the casket was lowered into the ground, Adaya's legs had given out. She had reached for the arm of LaTanya, her best friend since grade school, who had caught the first train up from D.C. Jabari hadn't even flinched. He just adjusted his tie when a gust of wind blew cold mist into his face. The pastor had read the prayers in a monotonous tone. The incense drifted with a sweet, heavy scent, but her husband had just looked at his watch, the expensive Swiss piece Adaya had given him for the 10th anniversary of his company. "She was your daughter for 15 years, Adaya whispered, crumpling a wet tissue in her hands. It was the last one from a box Sanari had given her for Mother's Day, with a note that said, "Mommy, only cry tears of joy." You taught her how to ride a bike, remember? In Fairmount Park. She was so scared to let go of the handlebars, and then she finally did it. She was shouting, "Daddy, Jabari, look, I'm doing it." "I remember," Jabari snapped, jerking the wheel so hard that Adaya swayed against the door. "And what? Do you want me to break down in tears right now? What good would that do?" Adaya flinched when she realized they were turning off their usual route home. Instead of heading back toward their place via Broad Street, past the cafe where Sanari loved getting vanilla lattes with extra marshmallows, her husband turned onto a side street. The wipers scraped across the windshield, blurring the rain into murky streaks. "Where are we going?" "Jabari, I want to go home. I just need to lie down." "I need to check on something first." Jabari pulled up in front of a nondescript 2-story building with peeling brickwork and a sign that read, "Community Care Center." A warm yellow light spilled from the first-floor window, revealing rows of clothing racks. "Wait in the car. I'll be quick." "Why? Jabari, what's going on?" "What center?" He was already opening the door, letting the cold air into the car along with the smell of wet pavement and rotting leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked a mournful, hollow sound, as if it were grieving too. "I want to check their hours and see what kind of donations they take." Adaya went cold. She grabbed the sleeve of his expensive cashmere coat, the one he'd bought last month, bragging about a successful deal. "What donations? What are you talking about?" Jabari looked at her as if she had asked something obvious. In his dark brown eyes, which were usually warm with sparks of laughter, there was now only the chill of a winter river. "Sonari's things, obviously. There's no point in letting them sit there gathering dust. It'll only mess with your head. We'll give them to people who need them, to foster homes or low-income families. It's a good deed. She would have wanted that. You know how she was, always trying to help." "You want to get rid of her things?" Adaya couldn't believe her ears. "We just buried her today. The earth hasn't even settled yet." "Jabari, what's the point in waiting? A week from now, it'll just be harder. It's better to do it like a Band-Aid. Rip it off and be done. Trust me, it's better for everyone. I'm doing this for you." "For everyone, or for you?" Something dangerous flickered in his eyes, like the shadow of a predator in murky water, but it vanished just as quickly. "Nyla, honey, you're not yourself right now. I get it. Grief, shock. But think rationally. You're going to walk into her room, see her dresses in the closet, and her textbooks on the desk. She was going to start college soon, remember? Always studying anatomy. Every time you see that, it'll be a knife to the heart. Why torture yourself?" "Because that's all I have left of her." Adaya's voice broke into a scream. She pounded her fists against the dashboard, not even feeling the pain. Her scent is still on her pillow. Her handwriting is in her journals, her favorite unicorn pajamas that she's worn since she was 15, even though they were too small. Her mug that says, "World's Best Daughter," the one she bought for herself as a joke. "Exactly," Jabari interrupted, wincing. "Scents, journals, old jeans. You're clinging to objects instead of letting go and moving on. It's an unhealthy obsession, Adaya." "Obsession? Jabari, we buried her today. Today!" Jabari shrugged with the air of a man dealing with a difficult child. "Suit yourself. I'm just trying to help. But if you prefer to drown in your misery." Adaya stared at him, unable to believe these words were coming from the man who had been her daughter's father for 15 years. The man who helped her with math homework, took her to dance classes, and picked her up from school. A heavy silence fell over the car, broken only by the rain hitting the roof and the distant hum of traffic. "I'm going to go in and see what's what." Jabari opened the door. 5 minutes, no more. You can call LaTanya in the meantime. She asked you to call when we got home. He stepped out, carefully closing the door behind him, and walked toward the entrance, stepping over puddles. Adaya watched his figure in the black coat vanish into the gray, rainy haze, and she suddenly felt a sharp wave of nausea. She flung the door open and leaned out, gasping for cold air. What is wrong with him? The thought hammered in her brain. What is happening to him? Maybe it was shock. Maybe this was his way of grieving. But somewhere deep in her mind, in the place where the most terrifying realizations hide, a truth was already stirring. He's perfectly fine. It was she who had lived for so many years with a man she didn't know at all. Or maybe she did know him, and she had just chosen not to see the moments when he was too harsh with Sanari for a B in physics, when he rolled his eyes at her stories about her friends, or when he always found an excuse not to go to her dance recitals. Jabari returned 10 minutes later, shaking the rain off his shoulders. In his hand, he held a glossy, bright brochure that looked inappropriately cheerful. "Got all the info," he announced, sliding back behind the wheel. He smelled of dampness and someone else's tobacco. "They're open every day except Sunday 9 to 6. They take clothes, shoes, toys, and books. Everything has to be clean and in good condition. I think we can start sorting through things tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" Tears welled in her throat. "Jabari, it hasn't even been 9 days. How can you?" "What's going to change in 9 days?" He started the engine. "Is she going to come back?" "No. So what's the point in waiting? Besides, to be honest, We need to clear out that room." "What? Why clear it out?" "Life goes on. I have plans to expand the business. A home office wouldn't hurt. Keeping that room like a museum is just foolish." "Are you even human?" She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. "What do you have instead of a heart? A calculator?" "I'm a pragmatist," Jabari countered calmly, overtaking a beat-up old Chevy. "And I'm looking out for your mental health. But if you want to surround yourself with ghosts of the past, be my guest." They drove the rest of the way in silence. Adaya stole glances at her husband's profile, trying to understand when the man she loved had turned into this cold stranger. Or maybe he had always been this way and was just a very good actor. She remembered their modest wedding at the city hall, how tenderly he had looked at little Sanari in her pink dress and promised to be a good father to her. Familiar streets blurred past the window, the turn toward the theater where they saw the Nutcracker every Christmas, the intersection where Sanari had learned to cross the street, gripping her mother's hand tight, the department store where they bought her first backpack, bright blue with butterflies. "By the way," Jabari spoke up as they pulled into their driveway, "I was thinking we should renovate the room too. Make it a guest room or an office. It shouldn't just sit empty, and we can sell the furniture on Facebook Marketplace. It's almost new. People will buy it." Adaya closed her eyes. Everything she believed in had turned out to be a lie. That morning, she still had a daughter, dead, yes, but still present in the world through her things, her room, and the traces of her existence. And now, her husband was methodically planning to erase those traces as if Sanari had never existed. The house met them with the smell of cold gumbo that Latonya had made the day before. The pot was still on the stove. Adaya mechanically took off her shoes, the black, low-heeled pumps she had bought with Sanari at the mall. Her daughter had insisted she get those comfortable ones because, "Ma, you walk like a penguin in stilettos." "I'm going to shower," Jabari tossed out, pulling off his tie, "and then sleep. I've got an early start tomorrow, plenty of work to do." Adaya watched him go, noting how he pointedly avoided looking at the door to Sanari's room. It was cracked open, and the familiar scent of vanilla perfume mixed with the aroma of watercolor paints drifted out. Her daughter had recently taken up medical illustration, saying it would help her memorize human anatomy for her pre-med studies. In the kitchen, Adaya mindlessly put the kettle on and took a chipped mug from the cupboard. Sanari had tried to fix the chip with nail polish once. It was messy, but sweet. Adaya froze, staring out the darkening window. Outside, the lights of the apartment buildings flickered, and red dots blinked on the radio towers. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Just the normal life of a normal city that didn't care that today, a bright young girl who dreamed of being a doctor had been lowered into the damp earth of the woodlands. "Don't you dare feed me any more lies about caring for me," Adaya whispered to the empty kitchen. "All those years. You took her to school, checked her homework, yelled at her for a messy room. How can you just delete it all so fast?" The sleeping pill took effect quickly, pulling her into a thick, restless sleep. She dreamed of the Schuylkill riverbank near the old railroad bridge, where she and Sanari loved to feed the ducks. But now, her daughter was standing on the very edge of the cliff, and behind her loomed a dark figure, familiar, yet a stranger. "Mama!" Sanari's lips moved silently, but somehow Adaya heard the words. "Mama, look in the backpack. It's all there. Don't believe him, Mama. He isn't who he says he is." The dark figure reached out, pushed the girl in the back, and she fell into the black water. Adaya tried to scream, but her throat felt strangled. She woke up to the sound of a voice, low and muffled, coming from the hallway. The bedside clock glowed 2:47. Jabari was talking on the phone, and there was no trace of grief in his tone. "Everything is going according to plan," she heard. "We'll start with the clothes tomorrow. Yes, I know the deadline. She's too buried in grief to suspect anything. The main thing is the paperwork. Everything has to be signed by the end of the week. After that, it'll be too late." Adaya lay perfectly still, pressing herself into the pillow. What paperwork? What plan? Who was he talking to at 3 in the morning? No, the insurance company is dragging its feet. But that's normal, Jabari continued, his voice moving closer. They'll pay out. They have no choice. An accident is an accident. The witnesses will confirm it. The floorboards creaked as he walked back. Adaya closed her eyes and tried to breathe evenly, faking a deep sleep. The door cracked open. For a few seconds, yellow light from the hallway spilled into the room. Then it went dark again. Jabari lay down next to her, pulled up the covers, and within a minute, he was snoring, peaceful and rhythmic, like a man with a clear conscience. Adaya lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince herself that this was just her grief-stricken imagination, that the conversation was about the firm, about shipments, about anything else. But then, why mention insurance? What accident? What witnesses? The morning began with a crash. Adaya startled awake. Outside, the dawn was barely breaking. The sky over the rooftops was the color of dirty cotton. Sounds came from the hallway, something being dragged, the rustle of cardboard. She threw on a robe, stepped out of the bedroom, and froze at the door. Jabari was dragging massive boxes into Sonari's room. "Why are you up so early?" she asked, trying to keep her voice sounding sleepy. "Business doesn't wait." He didn't even turn around. "I talked to some guys from work. They're bringing a truck the day after tomorrow. The faster we clear this out, the easier it'll be for you." "The day after tomorrow, Jabari? It hasn't even been 9 days." He whirled around, and Adaya involuntarily backed away. There was such a flash of rage in his eyes that for a moment she thought she was looking at a different person. "How long are you going to cling to these rags?" he barked, throwing a box onto the floor. "Do you think she cares up there when we sort through her junk? Stop whining already. Enough is enough." Adaya stood there, hand pressed to her throat. In 15 years of marriage, she had seen Jabari tired, irritated, even angry when business was bad. But this face twisted with fury, the vein pulsing in his temple. She had never seen this. He seemed to scare himself with the outburst. His face smoothed out. He ran a hand through his hair and stepped toward her. "Sorry, honey. I'm just not myself. It's the stress, the funeral, no sleep." He tried to hug her, but Adaya slipped out of his reach. "I just want you to recover faster. As long as these things are here, you'll just keep suffering." "I'll put the kettle on," she said hollowly, not looking back. In the kitchen, Adaya leaned against the sink, watching the water run. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her heart was hammering in her throat. This wasn't just the anger of a man tired of someone else's grief. This was the rage of a cornered beast trying to finish a job. The doorbell rang while she was mechanically slicing bread for breakfast. Jabari went to answer it. Voices drifted from the foyer. It was their neighbor from downstairs, Miss Hattie, a frail old woman with sharp, bird-like eyes. Adaya stepped out of the kitchen to meet her. "Nyla, baby, my heart just breaks for you," the neighbor wailed. "Such a tragedy, such a tragedy. I brought over some peach cobbler and some fried chicken for the house. You have to eat, honey, or you'll waste away to nothing." "Thank you. Come into the kitchen, Miss Hattie." Adaya took the food and led the guest inside. A minute later, the neighbor was sitting at the table, and Adaya was setting a cup before her, trying not to catch her husband's eye as he lingered in the doorway. "I'm going to go back to work," Jabari said. "You ladies talk. Women's business, you know how it is." Miss Hattie finished her tea and stood up. "All right, sugar, I won't keep you. Rest up. Take care of yourself." Adaya walked her to the door. The neighbor was putting on her coat when Jabari stepped out of Sonari's room. "I'll walk Miss Hattie out," he tossed out. "Nyla, you go lie down." Adaya nodded and pretended to go back to the kitchen, but she stopped, pressing herself against the wall. From there, she could hear the conversation in the hallway perfectly. "Did you get the insurance settled?" came Miss Hattie's muffled voice. Because the payouts can take forever if the paperwork isn't right." "Quiet," Jabari snapped. "The walls are thin. It's all handled. Don't worry, you'll get yours, like we agreed. Your debt is cleared. We're square." Adaya froze. She didn't breathe. Get yours? What debt? For what? She heard the front door slam. The neighbor was gone. Adiah hurried back to the kitchen and sat at the table, trying to look composed. After her husband left for the office, saying he'd be back by evening and telling her to start sorting clothes, she went up to her daughter's room. The room met her with dust motes dancing in the sunlight. The snow outside reflected the few rays breaking through the clouds. On the walls hung posters of the human skeleton, the muscular system, and blood vessels. On the shelves stood the collection of medical atlases Sanari had been building since she was 12, asking for them for birthdays and saving her allowance. Adiah sat on the bed and ran her hand over the soft, fuzzy duvet with the Big Dipper print. She started mechanically folding things from the closet, t-shirts, jeans, that polka dot dress they bought for 9th grade prom. She saw the white lab coat in the very back of the closet, brand new, crisp with starch, with a student intern badge. Sanari had bought it with her first paycheck from a summer job at the vet clinic. "Ma, look!" she had shouted then, bursting into the house. "A real medical one, like the real doctors. I'm going to wear this the day I get in." Adiah pressed the coat to her face, inhaling the faint scent of her daughter's perfume, vanilla with a hint of jasmine. She cried silently and bitterly, choking on the tears she had held back all day yesterday. The door flew open so hard it hit the wall. "I told you to pack everything up, not to mope around." Jabari snatched the coat from her hands, crumpled it, and threw it into a box labeled Charity. "Enough already! How much of this can I take?" He left as abruptly as he had appeared, slamming the door. Adiah sat on the bed, staring into space, and then her eyes fell on the backpack. Not the one Sanari had taken with her that last morning, but the old-school one with patches from her favorite bands. The investigator had returned the things from the car on the 3rd day, but it was just the new backpack. Empty. Her driver's ed documents, and a broken phone. But Sanari had left this old one at home. Adiah had thought it was strange at the time. Her daughter never went anywhere without it. She took it everywhere, even to the store for bread. Now it was clear why. Inside were textbooks, notebooks, a pencil case. Adiah went through the items almost mechanically until, inside an anatomy textbook, she found a paper folded into fourths. Sana'ari's handwriting, round with curls on the capital letters, blurred before her eyes. "Mama, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't wrong, and he actually did something. I was scared to tell you before. You would have asked him, he would have denied everything, called me a dreamer, and I would have been the enemy in my own home, and I had nothing to take to the police but suspicions. So I've been gathering evidence. Everything is in the hidden compartment of the backpack. Mama, don't believe him, no matter what he says. I love you so much." Her hands wouldn't cooperate, and Adiah barely found the hidden pocket in the lining. Inside was a thin folder of documents. She pulled it out, and the pages fanned across the floor. Insurance policies, 2 of them. On Adiah's life, $500,000. On Sana'ari's life, $200,000. The beneficiary, Jabari Daniel Sterling Krimov. Bank statements, debts, $300,000. Loans, lines of credit, and interest growing like a snowball. Printouts of messages, screenshots from a messaging app. Jabari and someone named Elvira. Adiah scanned the dates and went cold. The earliest messages were from 15 years ago, the first year of their marriage. "Just a little longer, my love. Everything will be as we dreamed. 15 years is too long. Jabari, when will we be together? Soon, baby. Very soon I'll get rid of the baggage and we'll start our new life." And finally, a small voice recorder with a single entry. Adiah pressed play, and the room was filled with Jabari's voice. "No one will prove anything. The police? They don't care. They have a dozen cases like this every day. The main thing is that everything looks like accidents. In a couple of weeks, it'll all be over. That'll solve the first part of the problem." The recording cut off. Adiah sat on the floor among the scattered papers. 15 years of lies. 15 years of playing the loving husband and caring father, while in reality, it was cold calculation, debt, and a woman he was willing to kill for. He had killed her. The first part of the problem was Sonari. The second part was herself. The front door slammed downstairs. Jabari was back. Adaya frantically gathered the documents, shoved them back into the folder, and pushed them into the backpack. She looked for a hiding place, the bathroom ventilation grate. She unscrewed the screws with nail scissors, pushed the backpack into the shaft, and screwed the grate back on. "You look pale," Jabari noted, setting boxes of takeout on the table. "I ordered your favorite, salmon and greens, and I bought that Chilean wine you like." He smiled and carefully filled her glass. Adaya watched with horror as she caught a quick, almost invisible movement. Something glinted between his fingers and vanished into her glass. "I'm not drinking," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "My head hurts. I'm just going to take a pill and go to bed." "Come on." He pushed the glass closer. "Just one sip. For her soul." "No, sorry. I really don't feel well." Disappointment flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. "Suit yourself. Rest up." In the bathroom, after locking the door, Adaya turned the water on high and pulled out her phone. She searched her contacts for Captain Marcus Sterling. He was a friend of her father's, a veteran detective in the homicide division. The last time they'd seen each other was 5 years ago at her father's retirement party. She dialed the number. "Hello?" The voice was gravelly and tired. "Captain Sterling, this is Adaya, Michael Arbus's daughter." "Adaya?" Warmth flooded his voice. "Well, look at that. How many years has it been? How's your father?" "Dad passed away 3 years ago. Captain, I really need your help. It's a matter of life and death. Literally." There was a short pause, and then his voice became sharp and focused. "Where are you right now? Are you in danger?" "Yes. I can't talk on the phone. Can we meet tomorrow morning? There's a diner near the old market on the north side. A quiet one, 9 in the morning. Come alone. Make sure you aren't being followed." "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Whatever it is, we'll handle it, Adaya, I promise." She turned off the water and hid the phone. The mirror reflected a pale face with wide eyes, the face of a woman who had just realized she was living in the same house as her daughter's killer and was standing on the edge of her own grave. But now she had hope, a man from her past, someone with no connection to Jabari, a professional who could handle this nightmare. She just had to make it until morning, just one night. The morning was freezing. The windows were frosted with patterns that looked like the snowflakes Sonari used to cut out of napkins when she was a kid. Crooked and lopsided, but made with so much love that Adaya kept them in a folder labeled treasures. Jabari was already in the foyer putting on his coat when she came down, carefully faking the lethargy of a sleepless night. "Where are you going?" "The office, obviously. I have to get the insurance paperwork ready." He adjusted his scarf, looking at her with suspicion. "Were you planning on going somewhere?" "I need to go to the studio to pick up some personal things. I took some time off." "I'll drive you." "No need. I'll call an Uber. You have work, and I want to be alone. Just drive and think." Jabari pulled out his phone, opened his app, entered the address of her design studio on Pennsylvania Avenue, and called the car through his own account. Adaya watched his fingers fly across the screen. She knew he would be able to track the entire trip. "A gray Camry, number 847. It'll be here in 5 minutes. Call if you need anything." In the car, Adaya pressed herself against the cold glass and counted the turns. On Broad Street, near an old pharmacy with a peeling sign, she asked the driver to stop. "I need to get some medicine, something to calm my nerves. Stop here. It's fine." She got out and pretended to head toward the pharmacy doors. But as soon as the car vanished around the corner, she bolted to the parking lot across the street where local cabs waited. She jumped into a beat-up sedan, gave an address, and told him to hurry. Captain Sterling was already waiting for her in the back corner of the half-empty diner, which smelled of burnt pancakes and cheap coffee. His hair had gone completely silver since she last saw him, but his gaze remained as sharp and attentive as ever. "Adaya, sit down. What happened?" She pulled out her phone and showed him the photos of the documents she had taken during the night. The insurance policies, the bank statements, the screenshots. She spoke fast and breathlessly, swallowing her words as she told him about Sanari's note, the recording, and the attempted poisoning the night before. He listened without interrupting, his eyebrows knitting closer together. Where are the originals? In the ventilation shaft, in the bathroom, in Sanari's backpack. All right, listen carefully. There's no direct evidence of his involvement in the crash here. The insurance is circumstantial, the recording too. We need to either find the guy who did it or get a confession from Jabari himself. Here, take this. He handed her a small black button on a pin. A microphone. Pin it to your clothes. It records automatically. And here's my personal cell number. Text me every 3 hours. If I don't hear from you for one window, I'm coming in with a team. You understand? I understand. Captain, I'm scared to go back. I know. But if you disappear now, he'll know you're on to him. We need proof. You can do this. Your father would be proud. The trip back felt endless. Adaya pinned the microphone to her blouse collar, hiding it with a scarf. She took a new taxi to her office, then walked the rest of the way home to make the story look plausible. The house met her with the sound of voices and heavy footsteps. In Sanari's room, 2 movers in uniforms from Jabari's transport company were hauling out the last of the boxes and rolling up the rug. Oh, you're back? Jabari stepped out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. How is the studio? Fine. My boss gave me the time off. Funny. I called there an hour ago. They said you hadn't been in. Adaya forced herself to shrug. I had a meeting with a client in the cafe across the street. A rush order. He watched her with a long, searching look, then nodded. Fine. Go rest. You look pale. In the bathroom, the first thing Adaya did was check the vent grate. The screws were in place, but something was wrong. One of them was slightly crooked, not the way she had tightened it. Her stomach turned. She unscrewed the screws and moved the grate. It was empty. The backpack was gone. Looking for something? Jabari's voice came from right behind her. Adaya spun around. He was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame, and in his hands was that folder, Sanari's folder. Interesting documents your daughter collected, he said, flipping through the pages like he was reviewing a quarterly report. She was a smart girl, too smart for her own good. You killed her. The words came out on their own. You killed her! Jabari faked surprise. Adaya, listen to yourself. Grief has clouded your mind. It was an accident. The police confirmed it. Then what is this? She pointed at the folder. The insurance? The debts? 15 years of messages with Elvira? He flipped through the papers, and Adaya saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. Sanari stuck her nose where it didn't belong. This proves nothing. And the recording? You saying the main thing is that it looks like an accident? Does that prove nothing too? Jabari froze, then slowly set the folder on the edge of the sink and looked at her. His gaze changed, as if someone had turned off a light behind his eyes. You listened to it? It wasn't a question. So you know everything. He leaned against the doorframe. So what now? Are you going to run to the police with a recording that a court won't accept because it was obtained illegally? With papers that I'm about to burn? I've already told people. I've told everyone. Liar. He shook his head. If you'd told the police, there would be people in uniforms here already. But you're alone, and no one knows what you found. No one but me. He stepped toward her, and Adaya backed up until her spine hit the cold tile. 15 years, Adaya. 15 years I played the loving husband. Do you think I didn't calculate every scenario? He spoke calmly, almost casually. Sanari thought she was smarter than everyone, too. A week before the crash, she came to me. Daddy, I know about Elvira and the debts. I'm telling Mama if you don't leave. She tried to blackmail me at 17 years old. My God, Adaya breathed. She shouldn't have interfered, and neither should you. You could have lived another 6 months. I was planning to set it all up beautifully. Depression after your daughter's death, suicide from the bridge. I would have even written the note for you. Now, I'll have to improvise. 15 years, Jabari. 15 years. I loved you. And I loved Elvira. I've always loved her. You were a temporary solution, Adaya. A convenient cover. A respectable family for the business, a nice house from your parents, and your father's connections. But time's up. The debts are crushing me. The creditors are breathing down my neck. $1 million in insurance payouts will solve all my problems. He stepped into the bathroom, blocking the exit. Who did you meet with today? No one. I told you I was at the studio. Liar. You weren't there. My app shows you went to the pharmacy and disappeared. So who was it? You wouldn't understand. You think everyone is a monster like you, but there are people who care. Jabari grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her so hard her head snapped back. Give me a name. Who? Who did you tell? Everyone, she screamed in his face. The police, the DA, the news, everyone knows you're a murderer. He backhanded her. Adaya fell to the tile floor, and the taste of salt filled her mouth. Liar. He leaned over her. If you'd told the police, they'd be here. But don't worry, I have a way to make you talk. Jabari walked out of the bathroom, locking it from the outside. Adaya pulled herself up, pressed her hand to her burning cheek, and grabbed her phone. Just one word in a text to Captain Sterling. Help. 5 minutes later, the door flew open. Jabari was back with duct tape and a medical bag. She recognized it. He occasionally brought it home when he was moving shipments of pharmaceuticals for pharmacy chains. Quiet, he warned. The neighbors aren't home. I checked. The movers are gone. Miss Hattie went to her doctor's appointment. Everyone else is at work. Scream all you want. No one will hear you. He taped her hands behind her back, then her legs. Adaya fought, but he was stronger and moved with confidence, as if he had tied people up before. You know what the funniest part is? He pulled vials out of the bag and filled a syringe with clear liquid. Sonari tried to fight at the last second too, when she realized the brakes weren't working. But it was too late. Physics, Adaya. Mass times speed equals goodbye. Oncoming lane. You monster, she croaked. Pragmatist. In this world, pragmatists survive, not dreamers. So are you going to tell me who you met with, or do I have to help you relax? The doorbell rang like a gunshot. Jabari froze with the syringe in his hand. Who could that be? The bell rang again, long and insistent. Jabari Sterling, open up. Police. He went pale and ran out of the bathroom. He bolted to the kitchen window and looked down. 2 patrol cars were in the driveway. Damn it! He rushed back into the bathroom and grabbed Adaya by the hair. Who did you tell? The front door below groaned. It was being kicked in. Jabari bolted from the bathroom, and Adaya heard the door slam, the sound of his feet hitting the stairs, and then the sound of shattering glass. A minute later, Captain Sterling burst into the bathroom with his service weapon drawn. Adaya, my God, what did he do to you? Hold on, let me get you out of this. He cut the tape with a knife and helped her up. Her legs wouldn't hold her. Circles spun before her eyes. He ran. He jumped out the window. He won't get far. The neighborhood is cordoned off. Did you get his confession? She nodded, pointing to the microphone. Sterling carefully unpinned the button and put it in his pocket. Good work. That's all we need. Just sit here. Jabari had fled. He had jumped from the first-floor window of the apartment building, hitting his shoulder hard on the frame, rolled onto the asphalt, and scrambled to his feet. He ran through the yard, toward a hole in the fence he'd spotted a year ago, just in case. Always have an exit strategy. His legs carried him through alleys, past garages, and past a playground where an old woman was walking a dog. Behind him were sirens. There were many of them. One thought hammered in his head. How did she know? Who did she call? The riverfront opened up suddenly. A gray ribbon of water, a low sky, and a pedestrian bridge ahead. Several passers-by jumped out of the way as he tore past. Someone shouted after him, but he didn't hear. Blood pounded in his ears. Red circles swam before his eyes. He stopped on the bridge, gasping for air. Ahead were 2 officers in uniform, hands on their holsters. Behind him, he heard footsteps, voices, and orders to stop. He was trapped. Jabari walked to the railing and looked down. The water looked black, oily, and indifferent. It was November, maybe 40 degrees. The current was fast. He knew that. He'd fished here with his father once, back in that other life. "Citizen, step away from the edge." A distorted voice came from a megaphone. "Don't make this worse." He almost laughed. Don't make it worse. Murder of a stepdaughter. Attempted murder of his wife. Insurance fraud. How could it be worse? Thoughts raced in jagged pieces. Trial, sentencing, 15 years in a state pen if he was lucky, more likely life. He knew what they did in prison to those who killed children, even stepchildren, even if they were almost grown. Elvira had waited 15 years, believing his promises. Soon, baby, just a little longer. And now she would be giving testimony, burying him to save herself. In her place, he'd do the same. Final warning, step away from the railing. Jabari swung a leg over the fence. The metal burned his palms with cold. Strange. What do you think about in moments like this? He remembered Sanari at 5 years old, teaching him how to make paper boats, patient and focused, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Look, Daddy Jabari, you fold it like this. He wasn't her father. He never was. The second leg went over the railing. Now he was standing on a narrow ledge, holding onto the frozen metal. Below was blackness. You won't take me alive, he said quietly to himself. Not happening, pigs. He let go. The water hit his chest like a concrete slab. The instant, paralyzing cold crushed his ribs and knocked the air from his lungs. The current dragged him down into the darkness, and the last thing he saw was a blurred patch of sky overhead, distant and indifferent. 3 days later, Captain Sterling called Adaya. They found him, some fishermen downriver. He's dead. Adaya was silent. She was staying temporarily with Latonia, unable to be in the house that was soaked in lies and death. How are you doing? I don't know, she answered honestly. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. You don't have to feel anything. That's normal. There was a pause, the sound of cars in the background of the call. We picked up the mechanic from Jabari's transport company. He's talking. Jabari paid him to tamper with the brake lines. Miss Hattie was detained on suspicion of being an accessory. She was watching you and reporting your movements to him. Jabari paid off her back utility bills. She hadn't paid them in 3 years. He had her on a hook. And Elvira was interrogated. She knew about the plans. But there's no direct evidence of her involvement yet. So she's a witness for now. Adaya hung up and looked out the window for a long time. Justice. A strange word. Hollow. Her daughter's killer was dead, but Sanari wasn't coming back, and 15 years of her life weren't coming back either. She sold the house in Philadelphia and moved to a small cottage outside Baltimore. She works remotely now, illustrating children's books. In the evenings, she often sits on the porch with a cup of herbal tea and watches the sun set behind the trees. Has she forgiven Jabari? No, and she likely never will. But the hatred no longer consumes her from the inside. She has learned to live with the pain, not forgetting it, but not letting it define every new day. In the house, on the dresser, sits a photo of Sanari in her white lab coat from that day at the store. She's laughing, pretending to listen to a patient with a toy stethoscope, alive, happy, and full of plans. And that is the only truth that matters. Not Jabari's lies, not his betrayal, not the insurance millions. But that the girl who dreamed of saving lives will remain in memory just like that, bright, kind, and full of hope. And the good she managed to bring into the world will stay forever. Adaya closed her eyes, tilting her face to the last rays of the sun. Somewhere in the distance, birds were flying south. Tomorrow would be a new day, and she would live it.